Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studios, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, this past week there was a very interesting article out of thehill.com. Now, I'm not sure if you read this online publication, but from time to time they publish some very interesting articles, and one specific caught my eye this week. Now, let me just give you a little bit of context and sort of decompress this entire issue so you can get a better understanding of what's going on. Now, the president recently this week ridiculed his opponent in 2016 after Hillary Clinton said to the Hollywood Reporter in an interview that she still thinks that, quote, nobody likes Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. And of course, the president had to chime in on all of this commentary with the president saying that he believes that at the end, she's the one who's truly unlikable. Now, let me just sort of roll some quotes at you again from thehill.com this week. Now, he did go on to say when Hillary says nobody likes him, nobody likes her, and that's why she lost, because ultimately nobody likes her. Now, this was said by the president in an interview on Fox Business Network shortly before departing for Switzerland in the overseas conference he's at this week in Europe. And then to sort of expand more on it, the president went on to say the following. She had every advantage, and it wasn't even close. And at the same time, she's the one that says people don't like, but if I had my choice in terms of personality, I might take Bernie Sanders over her, but I would probably take neither. Now, of course, Hillary Clinton sparked controversy this week, as I mentioned, with an interview with the Hollywood Reporter, when she told the online publication that she believes that Sanders, who was a rival of hers during the 2016 Democratic primary process, and perhaps a eventual 2020 Democratic nominee this year, well, she went on to say the following. He was in Congress for years. He had one senator support him, and nobody likes him. Nobody wants to work with him. At the same time, he got nothing done. He was a career politician. It's all just baloney, and I feel so bad that people got sucked in. Now, consequently, Clinton defeated Sanders in at times a very contentious Democratic primary to secure the party's nomination in 2016. But many Clinton supporters were indeed frustrated at the time because many Sanders supporters did not want to support her, and ultimately, Bernie Sanders himself did not concede the nomination sooner, and thus, the Clinton camp would argue that Sanders supporters made it very difficult for her and that they ultimately didn't back her fully during the eventual election season in November of 2016. Now, our comments were published earlier this week, and it led to an outpouring of support for Bernie Sanders online and also from some of his 2020 fellow candidates. And let me just say this, folks. The very next day after the comments were made by Hillary Clinton, it was almost sort of like the same effect that it had from the Elizabeth Warren scandal, where he was able to raise at least $10 million the following day. Now, to no one's surprise, Bernie supporters are very adamant, they're very passionate, and they're very devoted. And it showed with the amount of financial support that they extended to the senator from Vermont. And of course, attempting to sort of downplay the heat that exists right now because of her comments, Hillary Clinton went on to say on Twitter, the number one priority for our country and the world is retiring Donald Trump. And as I always have, I will do whatever I can to support the eventual Democratic nominee. And of course, the president has remained fixated on his 2016 opponent for more than 3 years now, sort of bringing her up a lot during the campaign trail. And even the mere mention of her name gets the normal type of chants from the crowd, such as lock her up and crooked Hillary. And of course, the president has never sort of, wasted any opportunity to ever throw his former opponent under the bus. Well, folks, let me just sort of unpackage this for you because I think there's something that's being lost right now. And the problem is that Hillary Clinton still doesn't get it. And the sad part is that she never will. Now, I've talked about it on this program before. Certainly, again, I have my reservations with the president. There are often many instances where he lacks decorum, where he lacks civility, where he lacks the tactfulness that we expect out of the chief executive of the United States. But again, in 2016, more than 61 million people voted for who they deemed to be a populist candidate, and that's who Donald Trump was, or at least that's what he was running under. And of course, folks, we all know that whether it was the liberal mainstream media, whether it was the DNC themselves as an apparatus, Hillary Clinton had every aspect of advantage and even privilege during the 2016 campaign. And this is what sort of boggles my mind about Hillary Clinton, that even 3 years later, it seems like she just can't take her losses gracefully. Now, she did so in 2008 when she lost the eventual nomination to then the senator out of Illinois, Barack Obama, who eventually went on to become president in 2008. But she lost that nomination during the primary process a lot more gracefully. Clearly, she hasn't done that in the 4 years since taking an L at the hands of Donald Trump. And this is what sort of like just boggles my mind at times, folks, because, again, as I said earlier, she had every advantage possible. Every poll from every major online newspaper or every print publication had her winning in a landslide. I remember even reading a poll exactly 5 days before Election Day where the New York Times even mentioned on their website that she had a 97% chance of winning the election. Now, they did produce an algorithm on their website to sort of illustrate exactly how popular she was in online polling, as well as sort of the regular polling that pollsters take during a campaign season. And even with the liberal mainstream media solidly supporting her, even with the DNC rigging the primary for her, and let's be honest, we've had revelations since then that former DNC chair Donna Brazile was even feeding her campaign questions during the debates, and even congresswomen like Debbie Wasserman Schultz out of Florida openly admitted to rigging the primary for Hillary in the state of Florida, or at least in her district, which shows blatant favoritism. And despite all of these advantages, despite every crooked and underhanded tactic that the DNC could do to push Hillary forward, she still lost, and lost convincingly in the Electoral College. Now, of course, I know we always hear she got more votes than him, approximately 3 million more votes when it came to calculating the popular vote. But folks, that doesn't matter. And that's not what the framers intended. The Electoral College is what decides the presidency. And of course, I get it that Democrats haven't liked the results of the Electoral College because it hasn't benefited them twice in the last 20 years. Obviously, the more recent example was in 2000 when former Texas Governor George W. Bush defeated the former Vice President at the time, Al Gore. But again, folks, overall, in really the 200 plus years since the Electoral College has been devised, it's worked fine. It's elected Democrats, it's elected Republicans. I get it, no system is perfect, but as we all know, the Electoral College is still remaining the best form, at least in this country, of selecting the presidency. And of course, Democrats all across the aisles have, really had an issue with this. And I think the biggest issue really comes from Hillary Clinton. Folks, let me just sort of unravel this too, because I think it's important that you remember this. The only thing Hillary Clinton had going for her during this campaign season was really the institution of identity politics, which I have denounced repeatedly on this program. Listen, with her shady past, let's be honest, if Hillary Clinton was a man, based on what we know about her, and again, we know everything that sort of constituted her background, a lot of sort of the shady stuff that her and her husband did throughout their years in Washington and even after leaving office. If Hillary Clinton was a man, would you really vote for someone like that? Chances are you wouldn't. But again, everyone that was fixated on gender in 2016 seemed to overlook all of these obvious things. And that's what made Hillary so popular within the Democratic base, maybe not so much with progressives, but many liberals throughout the Democratic Party. And despite all of that, she still took an L at the hands of a guy running as a populist. Now, whether or not he truly is a populist by definition, again, we can debate that another day. But folks, this is something that, I'm thankful she didn't win. And again, with everything set up in her favor, with every aspect of advantage, with every aspect of privilege that she had at her disposal, taking an L is forever her legacy. And let's be honest, she continues to come across as a very bitter and resentful woman. And no offense to anybody here, it's not a good look for you, Hillary. And you know what? That's the truth. And folks, I'm sorry to tell you that, but I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm not here to sort of, coddle your feelings. I'm here to provide you with facts. And again, folks, 4 years later, Hillary Clinton still has not learned her lesson. And you know what? She probably never will. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. On the most recent edition of the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking was Imani Oakley, and she is the legislative director of the New Jersey Working Families Alliance. Now, for any of you that are not aware, the Working Families Alliance and their national organization tends to be a rather progressive nonprofit. And in recent headlines, the National Executive Board has indeed endorsed Elizabeth Warren, the senator out of Massachusetts, as their candidate during this primary process. Now, Imani was very gracious with her time. She was on with me for over 75 minutes on the podcast. And here are some highlights I wanted to share with you from our conversation. First and foremost, we discussed really what the New Jersey Working Families Alliance stands for, their platform, and quite frankly, what motivates her to advocate for progressive causes in Trenton as the organization's legislative director. Let's check out what she had to say.
Give us something concise, really, that helps us understand really the platform and what your organization advocates for, New Jersey overall.
Sure. So I'll go macro, then might go to New Jersey, because I think you have to kind of explain the macro of working families before you can understand how kind of New Jersey working families fits into the picture.
Sure.
So nationally,
Sure.
The Working Families Party is an organization that pushes kind of two prongs. So one of the prongs is pushing for progressive legislation and policy. So any policies that we deem to be progressive, that we think would be good for working everyday people, we push hard for those either statewide or sometimes at the federal level. The other prong is that we run progressive candidates. So candidates that support those policies that we deem to be progressive and will fight for them once they get into whatever elected seat that is. We try to help get them into office, and that could take a couple of different ways. We could either, put boots on the ground for them. We could do, social media pushes for them. We can fundraise for them. I mean, that could look like a lot of things. So like all of those things. And so that's what it's like on the national level and kind of the overall big picture of working families. In New Jersey, we are a little bit different in that we don't do as much on the running candidate side, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. But we do a lot in New Jersey regarding progressive policies. I mean, New Jersey Working Families was instrumental in what we were talking about yesterday, getting the $15 minimum wage passed. Over the past year, we have been fighting for EDA reforms, which is, I don't know if your audience has been paying attention to that fight, but basically a whole bunch of people got paid really, really well off taxpayer dollars, and then they were supposed to revitalize the community, and they completely failed to do that. So that has been, a big fight of ours over the past year. And then also last budget season, and likely coming up in this budget season, we'll be fighting for things like the millionaire's tax and other budget things, which we talked about a little bit yesterday on the show. So, getting back to New Jersey working families not running candidates. So in New Jersey, very interesting, we have a ballot setup that is very unique, literally from any other state. We are the only state that still has a ballot setup like this. It's like an ancient type of thing. And other states used to have it. They all got rid of it. And that's called the line. And that's basically when party chairs decide who gets to be first on the ballot. So it's going to be typically on the left side, and it's the first line straight down. And basically what that line, being on that line, gives you an automatic 30% to 35% of the vote, because frankly, a lot of people just think they're being good Democrats. They see Democrat and they vote down the line, when really that person could have gotten there for a number of reasons. They might legitimately be good, but more often than not, they just know the right people. And so, one of the issues that New Jersey Working Families has is that if we were to run candidates, we would be fighting against people who automatically have 35% of the vote. We are trying to, start looking at candidates that can maybe give people a run for their money. But again, that's going to be a very long fight. So that's kind of Working Families in a nutshell.
Undoubtedly, she stays very busy in the capital city here in the Garden State, of course, working in legislative affairs and, of course, advocating for policies that really represent the interests of the New Jersey Working Families Alliance. Again, I can't say enough about her hard work, and while we agree to disagree a lot during the 75 minutes in the interview on the podcast, I think we found some common ground on issues such as the minimum wage, spending, and even looking at the national outlook for this year's presidential election. Now, the second highlight I want to bring to your attention was really Imani's ability to explain to our audience really what a progressive is. And in today's political climate, which is very polarizing and even oftentimes very tribal, terms get thrown around and we really don't know what they mean. What does it mean to be a conservative? What does it mean to be a libertarian? What does it mean to be a constitutionalist? What does it mean to be a moderate? What does it mean to be a liberal? What does it mean to be even a progressive? These are all very confusing terms for people that perhaps aren't political scientists or sort of watch, read, or even listen to politics in a very casual manner. Sure enough, though, Imani was able to give us some perspective about what being a progressive is and how it reflects her ability to do her job, and more so, what it means to be a progressive in not just New Jersey, but in the national political climate. Let's hear what she had to say.
But really, how do we define someone who is a progressive? Like, what's being a progressive consist of?
Yeah, so this is a great question, especially because I completely agree with you. If you ask 10 different people what being a progressive means, you'll get 10 different answers, right? And typically what I find is that people's answers vary on like region and kind of upbringing. So, for example, progressive in New Jersey likely means something completely different than progressive in South Carolina, right? And
Sure.
so, if I were to describe it, the way I define personally, and this is like my personal definition, if others agree, great. If not, we can have that conversation. But my personal definition of progressivism is someone or an institution that pushes for laws that break down oppressive systems from the past. So, for example, redlining, right? Redlining is a practice, a discriminatory practice of lending that was used. I think like not too long ago they said like it was still used today, but the time frame that people tend to talk about is like the 60s and the 70s, where essentially Black and brown folks were getting higher loans or worse loans for their houses than white folks were, despite having the same financial background. So if you took, a white family that had a certain amount of income, certain amount of credit, et cetera, they would get a better loan deal than a Black family with the exact same thing. And so, in my opinion, progressivism is any institution or any elected official that looks back at that history, says, okay, how did that affect us now, and then pushes for policies that fix that. So that's my personal definition. But again, progressivism, I completely agree. It's a term that spans many different things for many different people, and frankly, it's all about where people come from, and whether like not only region, but like how they were brought up. Different things evoke what progressivism means for different people.
It was a very pleasant interview with Imani Oakley. It was, again, both informative and educational, to say the very least. Now, you can listen to the episode in its entirety by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk in the Hudson. And you can download the episode and listen to it anywhere, anytime, from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Again, we'll continue having wonderful guests every Wednesday night live at 9 p.m. on Talk in the Hudson. And of course, folks, my guests never disappoint because we want to keep the dialogue going and certainly get you engaged during this very volatile and very interesting political season. Now to some local stories, and we'll start off in Jersey City, and a guy that has been in the headlines since the end of last year, and quite frankly, whose name continues to be in the news cycle. Now, a shout out to my fellow journalist, John Hines from the Hudson County View, as he published an article earlier this week detailing the current saga involving the former president of the Jersey City Board of Education, Sudan Thomas. Now, let me just give you a disclaimer, folks, real quick here, because I've had Sudan on my podcast numerous times throughout 2018 and also in 2019. I've come to know Sudan as a hardworking single dad, but without a doubt, his name in the headlines has generated a lot of controversy and a lot of chatter. And of course, as we all know, he was indeed implicated by the Attorney General along with other Hudson County officials during a recent bribery scandal that has engulfed all of Hudson County. Now, let me just give you some context here about really what's involving Sudan Thomas and an update on his current legal situation. Now, again, as reported at the Hudson County View this week, the attorney representing the former Jersey City Employment and Training Program Acting Executive Director and the former president of the Jersey City Board of Education, Sudan Thomas, is indeed dropping him as a client, alleging that Mr. Thomas owes his attorney over $25,000 in outstanding legal bills. Now, let me just give you a little bit of context here, folks, from this great article. Now, apparently, Christopher Adams was the attorney for Sudan Thomas, and his law firm of Greenbaum, Rowe, Smith, and Davis LLP wrote in a Friday court certification that he asked to be relieved as counsel for Sudan Thomas. Quote, GRSD seeks to withdraw his counsel for Thomas due to, 1, the failure to pay counsel fees, and 2, a breakdown in communication. Now, according to the court's filings, Adams' firm was retained by Thomas to represent him in a civil lawsuit filed by former JCETP employee Nuria Sierra, which alleges that Thomas committed financial improprieties while the head of the Jersey City Education and Training Program. Now, JRSD was hired on August 14th, just 5 days after Sierra had filed suit, and about a month after she sent a letter to the Office of the Attorney General and the U.S. Attorney asking both agencies to investigate Sudan Thomas. Now, Adams further states in the court document that Thomas paid his firm $15,000 to represent him in the civil court matter, but just over a month later, approaching September 20th, GRSD entered into another agreement with Thomas to represent him in the Division of Criminal Justice investigation. Now, upon further negotiations, the firm agreed to accept $10,000 for the DOJ case and $5,000 for the civil case, according to the retainers that were indeed filed with the law firm. Now, the DOJ probe led to Thomas being charged on December 19th by the New Jersey Attorney General's office with, quote, accepting $35,000 in cash bribes in connection to a potential 2021 city council run. Well, folks, again, we'll see what happens with Sudan Thomas, but it's a very tragic story, to say the very least, for a guy who had very big aspirations after becoming the president of the Jersey City Board of Ed, and quite possibly was a big name to be considered for a council seat in 2021. Well, that has all crashed and burned, unfortunately, for Sudan Thomas. Now, again, I believe, as many of us here watching today, that there is the presumption of innocence, as our legal system is based on that. But you know what, folks? According to some of my sources, the charges are extremely incriminating, and some of the evidence is quite damning. Now, again, I believe in the presumption of innocence, and I hope that Sudan Thomas will get his day in court. He'll be able to call witnesses, cross-examine them, whatever the case may be, and whoever he hires now as an attorney will be able to service his client to the best of his ability. But without a doubt, Sudan Thomas remains a very polarizing figure, and what was once someone with considerable political capital is now someone who has become a tragic figure and really a representation of what happens when you get in over your head in not just Hudson County politics, but overall politics. And we'll keep you posted here on the show as to what happens with Sudan Thomas, but you know what? I have a bad feeling this may not end well for the former president of the Jersey City Board of Education. In other local news, let's travel further south to Bayonne. An excellent story by Daniel Israel out of the Hudson Reporter this week. And the headline reads, Hospital Transparency Bill Becomes Law in the Wake of the Bayonne Medical Center Crisis. Now, again, let me give you a little information to just sort of unpackage what's going on here. Now, there's been a series of hospital transparency bills being written, and the ongoing Bayonne Medical Center crisis was indeed signed into law recently on Tuesday, January the 21st, by Governor Phil Murphy. Now, members of the State Assembly right here in Hudson County, Nicholas Cervalotti, and his running mate in the Assembly, Angela McKnight, along with Robert Karbajanek out of Middlesex County, sponsored the legislation at hand, and it aimed at increasing New Jersey's hospitals' transparency to help prevent the abrupt loss of any important healthcare services in local communities. As we all know, folks, the Bayonne Medical Center has been facing considerable financial turbulence in recent months, and I applaud the Assemblymen and Assemblywomen out of Hudson County, both Nicholas Cervalotti and Assemblywoman Angela McKnight, for being so proactive in trying to prevent the Bayonne Medical Center from closing down. It provides an invaluable amount of services to Bayonne residents and even to many residents on the south side of Jersey City. Now, of course, again, here's a quote from Assemblyman Cervalotti that really sheds light on how important this issue is for the city of Bayonne. If we had known sooner about a planned merger that could leave residents without access to health care, we could have had conversations with CarePoint Health to try to determine a better approach. For a district as densely populated as the 31st Legislative District, which comprises the south side of Jersey City and Bayonne, the closure of a medical center could be the difference between life and death for our residents. Now, the law draws upon recommendations of both the State Commission of Investigation and their report regarding hospital-related oversight and accountability within the state of New Jersey. And the report came as a result of SCI's investigation into CarePoint Health's financial management. Now, two of the bills in the three-bill package were signed into law by Governor Murphy on January the 21st, while the third bill was signed before that on January 13th. Now, folks, I can't say enough about the initiative by both Assemblywoman Angela McKnight and Assemblyman Nicholas Cervalotti. And for residents that live nearby, having, as I said, a medical center that's accessible and affordable is something that is invaluable. And we'll see what happens with these bills because, of course, it just won't be the Bayonne Medical Center that'll be under the microscope, but other medical centers throughout the state of New Jersey that hopefully these bills will help and ultimately benefit. Folks, again, healthcare is so important to us, to all our family members, to our colleagues, to our neighbors, to our friends, and the ability to go to a medical center that's relatively close to our homes Hey, I can't state enough how important that is. And we'll find out for the rest of 2020 and the foreseeable future what impact these bills are going to have on medical centers all across the state. And of course, for an area as densely populated as Hudson County, and specifically the 31st Legislative District, as I mentioned earlier, which is comprised of the city of Bayonne and, of course, the south side and the west side area of Jersey City, having an apparatus like the Bayonne Medical Center up and running and operational is going to prove to be invaluable for residents, and hopefully other medical centers that might be facing the same type of closure as the Bayonne Medical Center once faced, hopefully get their relief, and ultimately these bills can go a long way in trying to help residents get the health care that they need and get it in a way that doesn't impact them both economically and also geographically. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group, check out their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and also www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. In addition, the Hudson Media Group is proud to partner with NJ On Air to continue to bring you wonderful programming online. Check out their website, www.njonair.com. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and also follow them on Instagram and Twitter. Lastly, folks, you can check out the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talk on the Hudson, every Wednesday night live at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk on the Hudson. You can listen to it anywhere, anytime by going to any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. We have great guests coming up for the rest of 2020, and as a matter of fact, coming up next week in a regularly scheduled appearance, I will welcome the chairwoman of the Hudson County Democratic Organization, Amy DeGeese, to the podcast. She always has a lot to say, and I have to just tell you in advance that Chairwoman DeGeese has been a very big fan of the show, and she's been consistent every single month since winning the chairwomanship in June of 2018. Of course, we'll discuss what's going on in Jersey City with the Board of Education, of course, statewide issues with her support of Governor Phil Murphy, and of course, the national political scene, as we know that the Iowa caucuses are approaching, as well as the primaries in New Hampshire and South Carolina in the month of February, which will ultimately start deciding who will be the eventual nominee for the Democratic Party to oppose the president this coming November. She'll have a lot to say, so trust me, you'll definitely want to tune in online on Blog Talk Radio. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to follow the show on Instagram at Talking Politics with Fernando Uribe. You can also follow the podcast also on Instagram at Talking the Hudson. Check me out on Instagram as well at Professor Fernando Uribe. Also, if you're a Twitter user like myself, check me out on Twitter at Professor F. Uribe. I love retweets. I love all my new followers and all the likes. Trust me, folks, without you, my loyal listening audience, this program would not be possible. So I'm eternally grateful to you. And again, I'll continue being a voice for you in 2020. And never forget, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, you know it's always Talking Politics right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.